Hi, I hope everyone had a nice break and managed to get some refreshments. So now we have evaluating and collaboration, celebrating the impact of children's wellbeing practitioners. The speakers are Professor Jonathan, who is from the University of Exeter, and Helen from King's College London. They'll be showcasing outcome data from across England, celebrating the real-world realization of CWP role, highlighting the growing impact of the CWP role since interception and presenting compelling data, demonstrating the effectiveness of CWPs in improving the well-being of children and young people.
We are still morning, just about, and I just wanted to say, firstly, what an incredible privilege it is to be here amongst everyone in this room, and just what it means to be stood amongst all of those that have contributed to this incredible role. I'm going to pass this to Helen to introduce herself first.
Hi, well, as Jonathan said, a real privilege to be here. So I'm Helen Barker. I'm one of the co-leads of the CWP course at King's College and also a clinical psychologist.
And Helen and I have worked together on a few different pieces relating to the CWP programme. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm based at the University of Exeter in a department called Cedar, which is our kind of clinical education and training department where the CWP role sits in terms of the training. So I'm co-director of the Children, Young People's portfolio. And I'm also director of something called Cedar Create, which is our evaluation and innovation hub within Cedar, and work closely with Laura and Beth and Catherine, and lovely to see other colleagues here from the West Country. It's a big day out for us from the West Country. So if you see us wandering around aimlessly later, just point us in the direction of Paddington Station, please. That would be much appreciated. So a little known statistic. If I say the word evaluation, data, and outcomes, 98% of the people in this room get really excited. And we've had a lot of it this morning, which is exciting, because actually what we're going to talk about now, Helen and I, is some of the national outcomes. And it's going to be a bit of a snapshot, really, of the impact of the CWP role across England. Do the slides?
Wow, she says. Yes.
Before we look at the data, it's really important to acknowledge everyone that contributed to this, because it's been a collaborative effort, hence the word collaboration in the title. So you can see those who have either contributed directly to this presentation or indirectly across the CWP role. So thank you to all of those, and particularly Peter sat here. It's lovely to see you, Peter, and all the work you've done with the CWP role and getting the evaluation kind of going. And to Beth and Mel, who are here from the University of Exeter, and Holly, who's currently away on holiday. But everyone up there and all those that we haven't mentioned, a huge thank you, because it's been a huge undertaking. Next slide, please. As someone who works at a university, I think it's physically impossible for me to not put a context and background slide onto a slide set. I don't think we need this, because we've had quite a lot of context and background. And this will make Laura happy, because we're just going to skip over the slide, because you pretty much know it. I think, yeah, let's move on. All I would say is that there was a real emphasis around the CWP role about the importance of understanding outcomes. Hence, this presentation being so important. So a quick rationale for outcomes, and many of you who've done the training or have been allied with the training will know this from your time undertaking the program, that rationale for outcomes includes improved clinical practice. It contributes to transparency and accountability of service, as we heard from Young Somerset earlier. It enhances shared decision-making. So if you're using an outcome measure effectively, then it should be a collaborative process. So sharing that decision about the course of support that the young person is being offered. Improves communication, within the intervention, but also across service as well when it's used effectively. And then often something that's overlooked is in supervision. So are you using outcome measures to discuss your caseloads or the progress of the intervention being offered? Next slide, please. And then moving on from that, this idea about a rationale for evaluation and reporting. So not just the use of outcomes, but why would we go about trying to collect those, report and evaluate and report those outcomes? So it's about, again, many of you will be aware of this working in service. It's about developing an understanding of actually what's happening in our provision and the impact and the effectiveness in the real world. It can contribute to sustainability of the role. So we've seen this happen in the Southwest, where we've been able to demonstrate the impact of the CWP role through the use of outcomes reporting and evaluation, and it's contributed to the role being sustained beyond the initial 1 or 2 years of that role. It enables us to offer support to services, challenge and development, and this idea of a feedback loop within services and within systems around understanding the outcomes and the impact. And just as importantly, this idea of celebration as well. So when we're seeing the positive impact like we are today, celebrating the impacts that we're seeing.
Works 50% of the time.
Yes. You have to point it in a very specific. I just wanted to give a quick oversight about this data and where it's come from, and why the evaluation of the role, kind of where it emerged from. And the data is often, for today's presentation, has been a regional focus. And a new workforce that arrived with the CWP role provided a brand new opportunity to consider how can we go about collecting outcomes. When a new workforce starts their training, as many of you in here would have, the opportunity to learn about outcomes with a fresh, kind of open mind to their purpose and their collaborative use provides a really great opportunity to implement outcome monitoring as part of day-to-day practice. And for many regions, universities and NHS England and Health Education England as it was, were very proactive in their engagement with services and providers to try and support the collection of and monitoring and evaluation of outcomes for the CWP role. And a lot of work went into solving problems or coming up with creative ideas and technical solutions to collecting outcomes. And this has been an ongoing thing across many regions in the country, this continued collaboration and liaison with services to try and ensure a consistent kind of data flow for the CWP role. And then obviously we've heard from colleagues about the potential for research and further evaluation. If we don't have the data and the outcome information, we're limited. And as you'll see today, we've got a significant amount of data to pull from. And just moving on finally for this section of the presentation, this today is a national collaboration of a range of regional data from 4 separate parts of the country. So we've got data from London, Reading, the North East and the Southwest of England. And everyone's gone about it in slightly different ways and got slightly different kind of data sets, and that's fine. It's messy, it's the real world. You know, what we're trying to do today is pull together as best we can that data to present to you just a snapshot of the impact of the role. So it's an amalgamation of this data, and as Helen will talk about a bit more later, it's not perfect in any way, but it's just giving a representation of what's being achieved by the role. So it's not exhaustive, it's limited in scope, some of it's slightly uncertain in terms of range, but again, it's just to try and provide an overview of what's been achieved through the evaluations that have been undertaken in those different areas. Okay, let's take a look. So the first slide, you can see that's almost 25,000 referrals that have been captured, which is an incredible number. And this is kind of like the headline slide. And I think this is a slide that obviously doesn't incorporate at all every young person and family that's been worked with, but this is the data we've captured. And if you look on the right-hand side of that slide, you'll see that it's 86% of young people who've had 2 or more sessions have got a paired outcome measure, which is incredible. And I think is representative of what we were talking about earlier, when we're saying when you've got a new workforce who are fresh, who are open to kind of new ideas and ways of working, it can have a huge impact on the way that young people experience their support. So yeah, huge congratulations to that, because that is no mean feat. Okay, next slide. So you'll see in some of these slides that there's ranges, because again, not every area collected the same data. So we've represented some of this information as range across, as represented across the different areas. But you'll see waiting times there represented in some areas. You've got as low as an average of 36 days up to a longer wait time. And one of the kind of asterisks around this presentation is if you want to know more about any of this data, please do email Helen or I, and we can point you in the direction of the regional teams that might be able to feedback in a bit more detail about some of the specifics of the data. And then from assessment to intervention, you've got 24 days as our average as well. Next slide, please. And then not every region would have collected demographic data, so this is a representation predominantly from the southwest. So depending on where you're from, you might think this is skewed compared to your own experience of where you live. But we just wanted to show for, again, predominantly the southwest, the young people's demographics of who are accessing the service. I'm hoping you can see that. I'm not going to read through every single detail of it, but it gives an idea around the age range, that there is quite a large proportion of younger age children accessing support, which is interesting. Next slide, please. And again, as you might expect, the highest proportion of young people accessing support are presenting with anxiety, and that's what you would expect to see based on prevalence data and what we would normally see in terms of the in national data that's collected in respect to the highest need. So when the national curriculum, for example, of the CWP program was being designed, it was based on the prevalence of difficulties experienced. This is why the program targets low mood and anxiety, and that's been consistent with the presentations we've seen. Okay, next slide. And before I hand over to Helen, this is just a snapshot of complexity factors. And I think this is although it's a range slide, so it presents within each segment the range of complexity factors we're seeing according to the area. It's a really interesting consideration for the CWP role, because obviously it's an early intervention role, but in some areas we're seeing quite high complexity factors within the pathways that some of you and the CWPs are working with. And that's a really important ongoing future consideration for the role, is the acceptability of referrals, complexity, how we work with them. But this is just a representation of what we're seeing from quite small numbers in different areas of the country around those complexity factors. I'm going to pass over to Helen.
I am? Oh, well, no, you can take that. Okay, so we're going to move on to look at the actual sort of routine outcome measures that were collated nationally, hopefully. So another acronym for you all, because you love them. So we're going to mainly present the outcomes for the RCADs, which is the Revised Child Anxiety and Depression Scale, and the Goal-Based Outcomes, or GBOs, as most of you will know them as. So this is, as Jonathan's already said, an amalgamation of all of the data nationally. So the ranges represent the ranges seen in different areas of the country. But you can see really, really encouraging results in terms of change in the total RCAD scale from time 1 to time 2. So between 41 and 53% of the young people being seen showed reliable improvement. within that data set. And also a very low deterioration rate, so only 5 to 8% of young people, even if they didn't improve, they certainly didn't get any worse within the time frame of the intervention as well, which is, you know, suggestive that actually, even if it's not causing improvement, it's acting as some kind of preventative role in terms of the intervention. And the 50% there just relates to the number of young people who presented above sort of clinical or threshold at the time of start of the intervention. So, you know, you can look at that in different ways. It's potentially suggesting that we're seeing a number of young people at subclinical level, but also, you know, 50% of them are also presenting with sort of clinical levels of anxiety or depression as well at the time of intervention. So this is sort of a subset of the overall set of data that breaks it down a little bit more into the types of intervention that CWPs offer. And again, just gives an overview of the reliable improvement rates for each of those interventions. So you can see across the board, whether we're talking about brief behavioural activation, which is primarily an intervention for children and adolescents presenting with low mood difficulties, 62% reliable improvement, or parent-led CBT, working with the younger children and young people within the services, 52% reliable improvement. So suggests that all of the interventions are effective and working and doing something useful for the young people who are accessing support. This is, I think, the most exciting outcome. But these are our goal-based outcomes. So for all of the children and young people who access the service, most of you will be very used to setting goals with those young people. It seems like a simple thing. In reality, is always incredibly difficult to set smart and reliable goals that young people can then measure, but it's a much more individualised representation of what the young person wants to achieve or the parent wants to achieve for their child during the intervention. And we have really great evidence that it's working and it's targeting what the young people and children want to focus on. So 66 to 71% improvement, and 80% of all young people kind of improve on all of their goals at some point during the intervention. So really, really encouraging results, I think, on those. And the last slide, sort of looking at the actual outcomes, is looking at session satisfaction. So again, really important to understand, do children and young people find the sessions helpful? Are they satisfied with the interventions that they're getting? And again, really, really positive results here. So over 90% of children and young people report sort of 90% satisfaction rates, or over 90% on all of the interventions that they receive. You can see they're quite high levels across face-to-face, hybrid and remote. So I think if you click again, it's going to do a little fancy, yeah. And there is some slight statistical difference, I think, between the satisfaction rates between face-to-face and hybrid and face-to-face and remote, slightly in favour of face-to-face, but generally, you know, satisfaction rates high across the board, whether or not they're delivered face-to-face or more remotely in intervention. It's going to do it again, I think. There you go. And again. Okay, so what does all this mean? I mean, overall, I think it shows it's a snapshot of picture. Time's up, apparently, so I'm going to go really fast on what it all means. So overall, it's a snapshot of the data nationally. It shows that satisfaction rates are really high, and the impact is really demonstrated nationally across diverse kind of socioeconomic, ethnic backgrounds, demographic areas, and multiple different ways of delivering this service. CWPs, and you'll hear much more about that the rest of the day, deliver these interventions in very, very different ways depending on which service they're in. Very positively, the outcomes are comparable to outcomes demonstrated in other adult and child and young people mental health services. Arguably, the rates of outcomes are better than we've seen in some other child services previously, but the kind of outcome data itself is comparable, similar to those in CYPR evaluation that's previously happened. The high reliable improvement rates in individualised goal-based outcome measures, I think, are something that's really exciting. It suggests that the interventions are targeted, really impacting what children and young people want to work on, and make them very child and young person centred. And there's some literature, if you're interested, around the use of goal-based outcomes and how it can maybe be more representative of young people's satisfaction with intervention. And again, the low deterioration rate suggests that, you know, possibly interventions serve a preventative role, but there's, you know, it's a possibility. There are numerous limitations with these data sets, which we won't go into, but what's exciting about it, I think, is it provides a real-world data. It's much less controlled than you will have in any kind of research trial, and so we can be much less conclusive about what has impacted on those outcomes for children and young people. But this is the real-world data of children and young people accessing CWP services. This is what's happening out there. You know, gives encouraging results, I think. There's loads that we don't know. We don't know about the impact of gender, ethnicity, complexity factors, and lots of areas I think that we still have very limited understanding of. And we also understand very little about the broader impact of the role. One of the big things, I think, and what I'm most excited about, I think, about this programme is how it's playing a part in increasing access, building resilience within communities for children and young people, and building those relationships with young people and making much more young person-centred services. And this data doesn't tell us much about that or the impact that that's having. So on that note, there's loads of future areas for research I think that we could go into. I think, you know, we've heard from the Andy research trial, there is research happening in much more controlled environments about these interventions, which will tell us more about the kind of active components of the interventions, but also have more control over what those outcomes mean. But there's lots that we could look into thinking about, well, who do these interventions work for and when don't they work, and how do we then meet the needs of those young people? Are that, you know, we've seen that in the complexity data, some of the young people that we're seeing, even in CWP, low intensity services, have very complex needs. How do we think about supporting those young people? Does it impact on outcome or doesn't it? We don't know really. So thinking about severity and comorbidity within that as well would be really interesting. And as I've said, the broader impact of the overall role within the communities is something that we'd really like to think of. So we hope we've inspired lots of interest in further research, which is really our primary aim, and given you a snapshot of what's happening nationally out there. And just to finish, again, massive thank you to all of the team. There was a number of people involved in pulling this together and a huge amount of work that went on behind the scenes. So again, thank you to all of you who know, many of you who are in the audience who are, to say thank you for doing that as well.
Me again. Hello. So the next session is split into two. So for the first part, we will be hearing from Francesca, who is going to be speaking about service development in Islington. Probably saying that wrong, but oh well. Islington CAMHS, bridging the gap between CWPs and the Islington community. If they say it one more time, I'm going to cry. So Francesca will talk through, it's there again, through Islington's community development journey, collaboration with partner agencies and the community, and how CWP work has been adapted to meet current demands. And then after Francesca, we will be hearing from Georgia and Megan, who will be talking about the CHUMs workshops. Love a good acronym, as we all know. They will be talking about the CHUMs workshops, the one-off workshops for parent, carer and young people on a range of topics. So, yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, as you've just heard, we've got two presentations from the sites that work with us at UCL and Anna Freud, and both of their presentations are focusing on local community engagement and how they increase accessibility through their CWP work and everything that they do in their sites. So I'll hand you over to those two presentations. Thank you.
Hi everyone. everyone, I'm Fran and I'm a qualified CWP in Islington CAMHS, and today I'll be discussing service development, our service development project in Islington. A very brief introduction on our service. So we are part of the Early Help and Targeted Services, that's Tier 2 in CAMHS, and we're based at the Northern Health Centre, which is in Islington. And our referrals come through the social, emotional and mental health team, and then the suitable referrals come through to us. And our team is made of a service lead, a CWP supervisor, 1 senior CWP, 2 qualified CWPs, including myself, and 3 trainees. So this is just a bit of a mind map, which might help you kind of make sense of it all. So it all kind of starts with promoting the CWP service. So that is kind of our main aim, and so we've done this by tackling 3 kind of main areas. So that is workshops, user participation, and linking with partner agencies in the community. And I'll be discussing that in more detail, but that just is a bit of an overview. But something that I will kind of highlight now is that this is an ongoing project, and we're really keen to continue tackling these main areas. But something that I will say is that it definitely takes a lot of time, consistency, and really team planning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey and kind of where it all started. So it all started when a Band 6 was appointed to really kind of make service development a priority in our team. And we met in an away day in June 2022, where we really mapped out these main 4 goals, which I won't read out because of time, but as you can see them there. And they all basically are 4 goals, which we really kind of mapped out together that day. And we had to understand, okay, like what resources we have available already, how are we going to reach these goals, and kind of time scales as well, and what agencies would be good to link up with, or what agencies have we linked up with already in the past, and which ones are important to kind of maybe that we hadn't really linked up with before and that we could link up with. It's all, again, about co-production, and all of these goals are really interlinked, and they all kind of, they're all connected. We also, at that stage, we really wanted to find out from other kind of services within CAMHS what had already been done, so that there wasn't like a duplication of work. So that's something that we did. And yeah, so kind of where we are now, which is going to be the main focus, is we have linked up with Early Help, which is a team in the Islington community that, it's a service in the Islington community that is already really embedded in the community because they work directly with young people and families. And we have linked up with them to not only kind of, tell them about what we offer, but also co-producing workshops, which is one of our main areas. And by doing so, we are actually, co-delivering them within community settings, such as children's centres, and not just online like we used to. So before we used to just offer workshops online, but now we're actually more in the community, which is really great. And also we have met with, through the Early Help link person, we have met with the other kind of teams within their team. They have like 3 different localities, and we've just shared what CWPs offer so that they actually know that they can refer to us if these young people want support. So yeah, that is one area that we've been working on. Something else that we've been doing is advertising, so changing the way that we've advertised our workshops, for example, and our CWP service. So we have made a CWP kind of information sheet, and we share that not just within CAMHS, but especially outside of CAMHS, and linking up with, as I said, Early Help and other kind of partner agencies within the Islington community to share on what we do and what we have to offer. Workshops as well, so we've changed the way that we advertise them. We've kind of made leaflets, like really clear leaflets and rotas to share outside of CAMHS so that families know what's going on. They can really easily sign up using an Eventbrite link. And the main kind of one that we've been doing more recently is actually delivering our CWP work within youth hubs. So we now are based once a week in a youth hub in Islington, in the Islington community, where we actually deliver our CWP work, which I think has been really great because it's just more in the environment of where young people actually hang out, and it's less kind of clinical setting, which might make them feel more at ease, and that's been quite successful. And also we've attended a lot of kind of community events, which were kind of in line with the local authority. We kind of went there and we just introduced our team and what we do, and kind of talked about workshops and how to refer to our service as well, because I think a lot of the times some families don't really know how to refer, what the process is. And something else that we're really keen on, and we've started kind of making these links, is with faith organisations, but that has been a little bit more of a kind of slower process because there is, a bit of hesitancy at times, so it's just been quite a bit of a slow process, but we really are keen to develop that part, and hoping that, later on along the lines that we might be able to deliver like a workshop in, for example, the mosque in the Islington community, but for now we're just making those first links with them. So some of the challenges, I would say, is making those first contacts, really, especially with kind of faith organisations. That has been really tricky at times, and also something that, as I said at the start, it does require a lot of consistency, and unfortunately, due to kind of changes within the team, and for example, trainees only being there and then having new trainees, it's quite hard to have a bit of a consistency, and so services might be speaking to different people, and that can make it a little bit challenging. Setting up service user involvement has been particularly tricky, so we haven't had a lot of uptake, so we have been speaking to senior management about that and trying to have a bit more of a plan in place. Definitely lack of funding at times, and just in our team it's only kind of 5 CWPs, so as I said, 2 qualified and 3 trainees, which makes it a little bit tricky at times. And there have been, as I said, a lot of changes within the team, so kind of maternity leave and covers has made it a bit tricky. But having said that, so this is a slide just a bit about where to next. So we're really keen, as I said, to continue making these connections with, continue being part of the community and offering consultation support with early help in family hubs. So just providing a bit of an informal consultation. Also, sharing an information pack with professionals, because sometimes actually professionals get a little bit confused of what CWPs offer. So that is something that we are currently working on with our manager as well, who will provide kind of more consult space as well. And also creating more tailored workshops to for young people in the community based on the feedback that we get from early help who work directly with the young people. So we're going to review our workshops and see how we can tailor them a little bit more. And also kind of continue that, creating that connection with the mosque and those conversations, and already having someone in our team, actually a trainee who did one of their projects with the mosque, meeting up with them and the trainees so that there's a familiar face there, and trying to continue having those conversations and consultation support. And ultimately we would like to, have the youth board up and running and service user involvement. So just a bit final kind of reflections. As I said from the very start, it's all about kind of the importance of a whole team approach, not just within kind of the CWP, but also the whole of CAMHS as well. And really, it shouldn't be a job just for the band 6, but also for everyone in the team, and kind of regularly meeting up to see, how things are going. Are we meeting our goals? Do we need to be a bit more realistic with some of them? Which in a recent half-away day, we had to kind of break down some of the goals a little bit more and be a little bit more realistic. So understanding kind of our limitations and in reaching these goals, and also really learning from other colleagues within CAMHS and other teams across services of what they've done to progress on service development. So yeah, that is everything.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, I'm Georgia.
And we work for the Family Wellbeing team at CHUMs, which is a team of CWPs. So we're here today to complete the ultimate step on our step ladder, which is talking to all of you today. But we did also want to talk to you about our workshops and how we've worked with the local community to deliver them.
So, hopefully you can hear me. Where did our workshop start? Well, as you can see, back in 2018, we started off with parent anxiety and parent behaviour workshops. And as you can see from the timeline, we have expanded our workshop offer based on local and community needs. We now offer 13 workshops which cover psychoeducation and strategies from a range of topics. So we've got anxiety, transitions, sleep, resiliency and more. We are also, to increase the uptake of our workshop, we work collaboratively with other agencies in the community who promote our workshops on a termly basis by supporting families to access them. So this can include the local CAMHS, our council, partner caring forums and also schools. We are also regularly invited by these services to host agencies and host events and talks as well as information settings.
So we've worked with medical professionals to deliver mental health awareness training. So where did this all start? So one of our lovely CWPs in the audience today had experience of working in an A&E department. And she'd noticed that there was lots of young people coming into A&E showing some of those really common symptoms of anxiety, so tummy aches. And often there would be medical examinations and tests and no sort of physical medical issues were highlighted. So the families, the young people, they were sent on their way. Often there was no conversations around mental health and no signposting was given. So this formed the basis for her first assignment. She was exploring the referral process from A&E departments into Tier 2 services like CHUMs. Alarmingly, in 2021, from January to March, there were only 2 referrals into our service from A&E departments. So how did she do this? She interviewed various different medical professionals working in A&E, so this included the matron, the A&E manager, paediatric doctors and nurses. From these interviews, there were some common themes that emerged. So 1, there was a need for mental health psychoeducation. There was a lack of awareness of Tier 2 services and accessibility issues. So from this, a small group of CWPs created a mental health awareness workshop to help professionals to spot the signs and also to give them practical tips that they can use in their work. So they linked in with a key link in the hospital, who then put them in touch with various different teams of medical professionals that work with young people. So far, we've delivered this workshop to nursing teams, healthcare assistants, and paediatric physio teams.
A second community-based project is the Mental Health and Stigma Awareness Workshop for young people aged 12 and over. So where did this all start? Well, back in 2020, another one of our lovely CWPs sitting in the audience today researched accessibility rates across CHUMs. She noted that 35% of our teenage referrals were from males, which compared to the 47% average, it indicated a clear gap for male mental health support in our area. At the same time, she also noted that females were twice as likely to experience mental health difficulties. And through further research and interviews with community clubs, it was found that societal views and attitudes often acted as a key barrier for teens to access support. It was clear that mental health difficulties needed to be normalised in our local area. So what happened next? All these ideas and research were then transformed into her workshop, where it aims to increase mental health awareness and reduce stigma on important topics such as puberty, male mental health, LGBTQ, ethnicity and social media. After the creation of these workshops, we then reached out to local communities and sports clubs across 3 localities. These groups could tailor their workshop experience. They picked which topic they would like to explore based on their needs and preferences. The workshops were then adapted accordingly and then delivered in a face-to-face setting. And so far, we have delivered to various sea and fire cadet clubs. One of these deliveries also led myself and the CWP to go on the podcast with professionals from the community club. Overall, this project has really strengthened our relationship with community ties and aided collaborative working to support young people's mental health in our local area.
So what are our plans for the future? So at CHUMs, we've been making an app. It's called Mind Journey. And the app is for young people, parents and carers, where they can come and learn about different emotional wellbeing topics. So this could be anxiety, resiliency, self-esteem, etc. So the way that we've done this is that we've broken down our 2-hour live workshops that Georgia showed you a little bit earlier on, and we put them into smaller, more bite-sized videos. There's also resources and handouts to go with each video as well. So far we have done a soft launch, and we've linked up with some key schools within our local area, and they're sort of testing the app out for us at the moment. We also have plans to then run focus groups with those sort of key links as well, so that we can gather some feedback to further improve the app. Our plan is to continue to expand the emotional wellbeing topics available on Mind Journey, whereby all of our workshops will be on the app. We hope that this means that our workshops are going to be more accessible to our local community and also be a further signposting resource for professionals in the area. Thank you for listening, and if anyone has any questions, please do come and find us. Thank you.
Hello again, it's me. So now we've got how children's wellbeing practitioners can increase access to evidence-based early interventions in communities. That was a mouthful. And Dr. Marky Wood from Northumbria University, Carl Sketchley from South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust, and Jane Pickfall from North Tyneside Council are delivering this talk. And they're going to be presenting 2 examples of how local initiatives can achieve a big impact on improving the lives of children and young people by transforming emotional wellbeing and mental health activities.
Hi everybody, I'm not going to do it very long. I just wanted to have a list of people to thank because there are so many. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you guys for the conference. It's amazing to see. I've been around this project right from the beginning. So thank you to the conference organisers. Thank you for everybody for coming. What an amazing project. We really love seeing it. So I'm Marco Wood. I'm the clinical director for the Northumbria University CYPI programme. So we've been involved with CWP from the beginning. I'm the workforce lead for psychological professions for North East and North Cumbria, and a consultant psychologist, so still dabble in a bit of this work as well, supporting our CWPs in service. Jonathan, if you guys are the ones walking around in the days from the southwest, we're the ones that are super friendly in the shorts. So you just keep an eye out for us as well. We're the ones that are smiling. Thanks to all our services in North East. It's great to see you there. We've got service managers, we've got CWPs, we've got everybody here. We're really, really happy to see you guys here. So we could have picked, when we were thinking about which services to pick, we could have picked any of our innovative services. We've picked 2 today that I have the pleasure of introducing you to about, and we thought we're going to draw out some of those new components of the new curriculum that's gone from a postgraduate certificate to postgraduate diploma, to show you some of our great work that these guys have been doing, and of course everybody here, about trying to integrate better in the community and trying to integrate better with services with that agenda of getting out into the community. Right, thank you to the academic team too that teach, and thank you everybody here. Right, lovely, all done. So without further ado, I've got Carl Sketchley who's going to be talking about their work into primary care network, and Jane Pickthall talking about her team's work into local authority. Thanks very much.
Hello, lovely to be here. As you can tell, I'm not from Newcastle. I am a southerner who moved to Newcastle, and it's great up there. You should come and visit sometime. We're unusual in that a lot of our services sit in our local authority. So as well, I have our complex trauma team because I'm also the virtual school head. And I also have the MHST. And Joanne, who's joining me, she's leading on the early help GP pathway where our CWPs sit. We also have a partnership with the national charity Barnardo's, and we have a systems change model that we're working on. And we've been working on it for 5 years. We've got a couple more years left to try and really shake up the system in terms of moving away from that high-end medical model to a far more community-based social model. And we've been really fortunate, I think, in terms of, as well as the funding that's come in around CWPs and our mental health support team, the Barnardo's Alliance has given us some funding, but also we've got a very innovative ICB who have made some brave decisions about where their funding goes that's enabled us to develop this system. And our focus is very much on building resilience around children, young people and families, so it's very much a whole family approach. We had an issue in terms of, and everyone will be the same, the number of referrals going to CAMHS, and was there something that we could do around this? So what we started with, using our innovation funding that we had from Barnardo's, was we created some additional posts that would sit in CAMHS from early help, who would pick up the cases that weren't meeting the CAMHS thresholds. So rather than saying to families, no, there is no service here for you, we were saying, right, you're not going to get a service from CAMHS yet, but first of all, we would like you to try this approach. And we ran a range of workshops supporting families with behaviours that often come alongside neurodiverse presentations. So they would attend workshops, there was a coaching element, so the family partner early help model where they would go into families' homes to actually help them see what was going on for them as a family and what strategies they could maybe put in place. In the pilot programme, that was about 18 months or so, we worked with 300 families. And of those families, only 1.5% then required a referral into CAMHS. So we were like, oh, we're onto something here. This is why innovation and research is so important. Because actually, once you find something like that, you're like, right, okay, let's do that. We know that quite often families see CAMHS and SIP services as the gold standard. And we were like, oh, they're still going to want CAMHS. But they didn't. They were like, thank you very much. You've helped my family to manage better. You've helped us understand our child. And thank you very much. So this diagram, I won't dwell on it much, but it's kind of our system in North Tyneside. So we had our high complex severe services, CAMHS, our crisis teams, our universal services, our children's services. But what we've also got alongside us is our SEND graduated approach, because we're very much of the mind that we can't be doing things separately, we have to do this together. Our mental health and emotional wellbeing strategy, we've turned Thrive, I Thrive on its head a bit. So we have a lighthouse because we live near the coast. For those of you who don't know, North Tyneside is a little bit between Newcastle and the sea. So our strategy is we'll look out for you, that's the services, but before then we want you to look out for yourself and look out for each other, which is where that sort of community model comes in. And in that bit in the middle that we've been developing, where our early help GP pathway sits, actually that's probably gone up to over 50 new posts that we've been able to create through all the new services that have come into place. So I'm going to hand over now to Joanne to explain what it looks like now.
Hi everyone, so I'm Joanne Telford, you'll be able to tell by my accent. I am from the northeast, so I've enjoyed coming down today to have a bit of a warm and a sunshine, so it's lovely to see you all. Following on from what Jane said, we found that the early help model within CAMHS was really successful and still continues to be so. So it's been going about 4.5 years now. We still have that re-referral rate of going back into CAMHS of less than 2%. It's sitting at about 1.8 at the moment. So we looked at how we could probably, enhance that offer. And some of it was by talking to GPs, talking to CAMHS, and them all saying the same thing. The referrals were still coming into CAMHS, so the referral hadn't dropped, so they were just getting as many referrals coming through the door. And the GPs were saying, yeah, we know it doesn't meet level 3, you know, tier 3, but we just don't really know where else to send it. So we had a little look at how we could sort of build a new pathway to support that. So the new pathway sits alongside the 4 PCNs, and there's a worker currently in each one of those PCN areas. Now, it's a very new pilot, and so the data, we haven't really got the data to analyse it yet, but really the early signs are that it's doing really well. We've seen a drop in the referrals going to CAMHS, quite a significant drop, and we haven't seen, at the moment, many referrals going back, but it's really quite a new pilot, so we're only really about 6 or 7 months in, but it's based on the same model as the early health CAMHS workers. So their families will be supported with, you know, that low level, like anxieties, behavioural problems. Parents are given parenting support, support around sleep, and they do the whole family support in complete young carers assessments. So it's quite a holistic whole family support that we do offer. And we looked at how we could really enhance that further. Oh, not good with IT. So we looked at how we could enhance that further, and we already had the CWPs embedded in the early health CAMHS section, and we looked at how we could then embed them in the GPs. So we've got currently 4 posts for the CWPs, and they sit now and are quite well embedded within the early health CAMHS and the GP service. So we triage the GP referrals on a weekly basis, and what we do is we look at the information and see where that's best fits. So some of it will be signposted, some of it will do early health assessments, others will decide to allocate a worker, also will decide to allocate a CWP. And we're finding that the earlier that we get in, the better outcomes are for families, because they're not having to go through CAMHS and go through the whole waiting list. So we have seen quite a number of referrals going into CAMHS reduce. I'm not saying it's been easy getting all the GPs on board, but we are starting to make inroads on that, and that's something that the workers continue to do, going out, speaking to GPs. It just takes sort of like one practice in the area to get wind of how well it's worked, and then it sort of encourages the rest. So I can just envision it really seeing it grow. The new roles have really been part of the development of making a big system change and trying to redirect the traffic from CAMHS to early health, and still giving them the support. Feedback has been really good from parents. Obviously, it's hard to give you sort of like the data when it's only sort of like 6 or 7 months in, but we do evaluate at the end of all the interventions, and the feedback from the families has been really good, and from the young people, so that's good. The new roles are part of the developments to grow the children's workforce and is available for that therapeutic support to the families, and it sits alongside our Connect mental health support team, and they all sit within the local authority and within family hubs. So we're very accessible to families. We go out and do visits to the home, we go out to the school, they can come to us. It's a very nurturing environment when they come into the family hubs and the children's centres, and we find that our DNA rate is quite low at the moment, so that's quite good. And the CWPs rather work as part of a multidisciplinary team, delivering high quality, outcome-informed, focus-based evidence interventions to people, well, young people who are experiencing that mild to moderate anxiety. So it's all going quite swimmingly well. So hopefully we can stand here next year and give you some data to prove them results. That's me.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're almost there. Lunch is almost upon us. I'm aware that it's lovely to hear so much about the wonderful work that's been done across the country, but I'm aware that there's so much information to take in and such a limited amount of time. I'm going to contribute to that a little bit by just giving a whistle-stop tour of our service in Gateshead. Myself and members of the team will be around during the break, so if you want to hear any more information, please grab us. We'll be delighted to tell you more. So I'm Carl Sketchley. I'm a clinical lead for CAMHS at South Tyneside and Sunderland Foundation Trust. And our trust, even though we're an acute NHS trust, we provide a range of mental health services for both children and adults, including the provision of talking therapies for adults. And for children, we provide getting help services, mental health support teams, and most recently, mental health work within primary care networks. And that's what I'm going to be briefly speaking about today. I'm going to talk about our PCN mental health service within Gateshead and focusing on particularly the children's team within that service and the role of CWPs in enabling us to increase access to evidence-based early interventions in the community that we serve. I'll set the scene with some context and identify the problem that we were presented with. I'll talk a little bit about the solution that we've tried to implement to fix that problem, and then say a little bit more about how well we've achieved solving the problem by giving some information about the impact of the work that we've done so far. So, you'd be really surprised to hear that in 2021, in Gateshead, we had long waiting lists for CAMHS. I know that will come as a shock to people. And there was a particular struggle in our specialist CAMHS in meeting increasing demand on their services. Again, this probably won't come as a surprise, but we noted that there was a lack of early intervention and preventative strategies and very limited community provision in helping children in meeting their mental health need. So, Gateshead CCG, in collaboration with partners and in consultation with service users, presented our trust with the opportunity to come up with a solution. And our solution in trying to meet the issues identified by the problem presented was the development of a PCN mental health service. The service was initially funded through the Mental Health Investment Scheme, supported by the ICS, and through using Health Education England funding to set up and established recruit to train posts, particularly within CBT and CWPs. So, the solution, the service model. The service that we have is a lifespan model. It's a lifespan service. So we have both adults and children's mental health workers working together in one service. For adults, we have community mental health development workers and peer support workers with lived experience of mental health services. And for children, we have high-intensity therapists, cognitive behavioural therapists, and CWPs. The task of the team is to meet the needs of people who currently don't hit thresholds or fall between gaps in services, and to increase access to early interventions. So, we have 5 PCN areas in Gateshead, and each one of the different types of posts that I've just described have identified areas that they cover. Included in the model are 6 children's wellbeing practitioners, but in total we have 25 posts working into the team. The service is integrated into communities, operating from a number of community bases, including GP practices, primary care centres, family hubs, libraries and other local authority buildings. The work of the children's team kind of covers 3 areas of the Thrive model. So we help children who are thriving by offering preventative and mental health promotion kind of strategies. We assist children who are coping through giving advice and signposting. And then for children that need help, we provide outcome-focused, time-limited, evidence-based interventions. So a little bit more about the direct work that we do. And we offer a combination of direct and indirect work. The direct work that we provide is essentially high and low intensity CBT for children and young people that present with mild to moderate mental health difficulties. That's delivered through one-to-one work with families and in groups, through face-to-face, telephone and video means. The group work that we offer kind of includes parent-led CBT, the Friends Resilience programs, amongst others. In terms of indirect work, we provide training to community practitioners, particularly with regards to an introduction to child and adolescent mental health. But we also engage in a number of other kind of preventative and mental health promotion activities, and I'll say a little bit more about those. In terms of the impact of the work, with regards to the direct work that we've done, over the last 12 months, we provided 340 sessions, assessment sessions, 1,934 follow-up sessions, and 495 group sessions. So in total, that makes up to 2,769 contacts with children and young people that up until this point would have not received any service at all. In terms of, as you would imagine, all of the direct work that we do, we use routine outcome measures, goal-based outcomes, and experience of service satisfaction questionnaires. In terms of goal-based outcomes, you'll see that over the course of the year, we regularly achieve over 90% improvement and recovery. With regards to the impact of the indirect work that we do, we've engaged in approximately 20 community events over the last year that have been participated in by over 400 children and young people. They've been extremely well received, and through those activities we're enabled to empower children and young people and their families to take control of their mental health and be able to use strategies to maintain and improve their mental health through sharing resources around self-help, including relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, grounding techniques, self-esteem, etc. Some photographs of some of the venues where the work has taken place. You'll see that we've not included children and young people in those photographs. In terms of what we've learned from the work that we've done so far, we've encountered a number of challenges, and we have some opportunities. So very briefly, we still experience high demand for the specialist services within Gateshead. Surprise, surprise, waiting times and demand hasn't suddenly reduced kind of overnight from the work that we do. Measuring prevention is really difficult, we all know. We would predict, even though some people might not want to hear this, we would predict that the impact of the work that we do with regards to prevention is going to happen much further down the line. However, we have willing partners within the community. The service has been extremely well received by children, young people and their families, and we have a real opportunity to make an impact on the mental health of children and young people in Gateshead, and that is all underpinned by the work of our wonderful CWPs. So thank you very much.